Welcome to episode 2 of the Lead to Win podcast, where this week we have a very special guest, one that I am very familiar with, head football coach at McDonald County High School in Missouri, Coach Kellen Hoover. Coach Hoover will share thoughts on core values within our program and how to implement them to develop a culture that wins. I'm your host, Bo Bergen. Let's get to work. Again, welcome to the episode 2 of the Lead to Win podcast. I'm joined by a very special guest, Coach Kellen Hoover, head football coach at McDonald County High School. Coach Hoover is in his 7th year as head football coach at McDonald County High School and is now, as of a few games ago, the winningest coach in program history. Coach Hoover started his coaching career at Monette High School as an offensive assistant coach and helped lead the Cubs to a state title in 2016. He took the head job at McDonald County in 2017, inheriting a program that had won just 9 games in the previous 10 years combined, and in 7 years has turned the program into a competitive and tough opponent week in and week out. The McDonald County football program has played in 2 district championships over the last 3 years, and morale could not be higher. Coach Hoover has a proven track record of developing young men to be leaders through clear, concise, and communicated core values within his program that his players buy into and live by while being a part of his team. Coach, welcome.
Thanks for having me. It's a pleasure to be on the show.
So I want to start off giving our guests a little bit of background on you. I wanted to know, kind of what your biography would look like if I told you to describe your upbringing, where you're from, what kind of led you into coaching, and what led you to McDonald County.
Sure. So born and raised in El Dorado Springs, Missouri, involved in sports as early as I could be involved. My parents were incredible and influential in that. Sometimes I get a little emotional when I just think about how I was brought up and how I was raised. They made sure that they were supportive in every single thing we did, and not just athletics. We did band, we did piano lessons, just everything to try to make us as well-rounded as we could be, and try to get us involved in as many things as we could. They made that effort. They made it work around everything that they were doing. I think of my dad, going from being a CPA when I was younger, and then just as my little brother and I got older and more involved, he switched jobs, switched careers, so that way he could be around more. Because CPAs around tax season, they're gone a lot, and he would come back home kind of in the evenings to be with us, and then he would go back to work. And he switched careers so he could be around more and get us to things. And I just think about that kind of stuff a lot. Just in parenting my own kids, like I think about how I was brought up and what my parents did just to make everything work, all the moving parts. Because my little brother and I were involved in a lot of different things. And so when I think about my parents and just the effort that I know it took, especially now being a parent of not even kids that are involved in things yet, I can already see how much time and effort it took from them to basically kind of throw everything else to the side and make sure that we were able to do everything we wanted to do and be involved in everything we wanted to be involved in. And so from there, played 3 sports in high school, was fortunate enough to get to go play college baseball, which you were a part of for a time. And so anyway, went to Missouri Southern and played baseball there. Met a lot of great people, and people I still talk to this day. Some of my best friends are from that time. And from there, ended up going to Monette to work for the head coach from my senior year of high school football. He had moved to Monette at that time, Chad DePay. Probably maybe the most influential person as far as from a coaching standpoint that I've been around. Just an incredible person, incredible coach. They moved in right across the street from us my senior year, and just an incredible family. Coach DePay and Sherry and the 2 kids, they were incredible. They were an incredible family, and it was amazing to just, you get a whole different perspective playing for somebody and then working for them. And so was able to see him in two different lights. I mean, thought he was an incredible man as a player, and then same thing as a coach working for him. Just can't say enough about Coach DePay. And so was fortunate enough to work for him. And then when he went to Ozark, Derek Ewell came in and was the head coach for a couple of years, and another great coach. Like just the creativity and just he's a different guy than Coach DePay, but at the same time a really effective coach that does a great job with kids in his own way. And so learned from two different personalities as far as coaching goes, and saw that the main thing is that you when you are in that role, you are yourself. You coach as yourself. You don't try to be someone else. You coach out of your personality, out of who you are. And so I saw that from those two. I learned a lot from those two and enjoyed my time at Monette so much. And, then like you said, was fortunate enough to get a job here in 2017 and, stepped into a place with a lot of great pieces already in place as far as just trying to put a football program together as far as a winning culture. Had great administration, great assistants, and, talent was here too. And it really was a great situation to step into because of all those pieces that were already in place. Oh, and I would be in trouble, and can't forget, obviously got married to my wife, Laura. She's actually a part of the core values conversation that we're going to have, kind of important in that actually. And then obviously have two kids. Blake is 4, Hayden's 1. And I couldn't go on and not talk about them and just the blessing that they are. And it as somebody who's been in the coaching profession, they have to sacrifice a lot, not home a lot. And my wife's incredible. She's Superwoman, handling both of the kids for long hours when I'm at work. She's amazing. And, the two kids are such a blessing as well.
It's a really good thing you remember to say that, because I often forget that too. But yeah, I'm with you. Good coaches never have bad wives.
Absolutely.
So on the other end of that, we talk a lot about upbringing and what leads you to a place. But when it's all said and done, what do you want people to remember you by once you leave a place? What are some things that you want your players to know and want the communities to know? Really anybody that you come into contact with, what do you want them to remember you by?
I hope they know how much, my assistants, all of us, I hope people know how much we care about kids and how much the day-to-day, it really affects us. Just the things going on with them. I mean, to tell you the truth, they are like our own kids. While we're here, they are. And, for so much of the day, they are. And so all the ups and downs that they're going through, we're right there with them in that. And so I hope people know how much we as coaches care about the kids. And I hope that when I'm gone, it can be said, really cared about the success, whatever that looked like. I mean, success looks different for a lot of different people, and hope that, I cared about bringing along, developing successful husbands and fathers. And that's what we're really here for. The wins and losses are great. I'm a competitor through and through, but aside from wins and losses, like those are just a fun part of the job, but the important part of the job, and again, the part that I hope I'm remembered for more than wins and losses is I hope that people thought I really tried to develop young people, tried to bring along and develop future husbands and fathers. And those are the really nice texts and calls that you get later on. It's, Coach, thank you for, whatever situations we went through together. Those are the ones that you really appreciate down the road when you get those kinds of calls and texts. That's when you're like, okay, we go through hard times, wins, losses, all that. Some years are really hard, But then you get those, it's like, okay, we are making a difference, whether we see it on the short term or not. Long term, you start to see that, and that's what makes it worthwhile. And I hope that's what is remembered when I'm gone.
I asked you what you wanted to talk about, and when I sent you a few topics, I kind of knew what you were going to pick. I don't know why, but that tells me that you've done a good job of communicating your core values and kind of making it your brand in your program. So what are your core values, and what leads up to setting those in place?
So I'll start with the second part of that. So there was a time that I felt like, when you are in a program, you have things that you want it to be about. You have these things that you feel like are important, non-negotiables, I guess you might say. But the part about getting them written down on paper and getting them concise and what you want is a process. And so it was actually, this is where my wife Laura comes into the picture. So we were kind of talking about that, and she was, for her work, for her job, she was kind of going through some Donald Miller stuff, and so he's big on mission statement and core values and things like that. And so she actually was kind of an expert on it at the time because she had really dove into it for work. And so it was actually the perfect timing to kind of go through that and figure out what those were and what we wanted them to be. And so I think we had a couple long drives. Her family lives in Omaha, so we make that trip a few times. And so I think we spent one of those 6-hour drives just talking about core values and kind of trying to drill that down and figure out what we wanted it to be. And so actually she's pretty influential in all of this, but we kind of got down to it. And so ours are family, which actually stands for forget about me, I love you. That's a really important one for us. It's probably that's number one. And above all else, that's what matters. But our other two that go along with that, so we've got grit. There's been a lot of talk about grit there, and then in addition to that, we've got integrity. And so we feel like that's what we want our program to be about. That's what we want our kids that are involved in our coaches that are involved in our program to be about. Those are the things that matter to us. And, that again went through a process, an initial brainstorming session with her, and then brought that into coaches meetings and things like that. We just kind of hashed it out and figured out, what was the most important things for us, what was going to help us be a successful football team, but also, develop great young people. And so you kind of have to find what that is. And, I feel like we've done an okay job with that. I won't say we always do a perfect job at making sure that it is just constantly in front of them. But I feel like most of our kids could relay what our core values are. And, that was part of what my wife talked about. She said, how many places have mission statements that nobody can say and core values that nobody can recite like that? And that's what you don't want to be, because you want your core values to actually be an important part of your day-to-day.
Yeah. I've often heard that culture is not a poster on the wall or something on a slideshow, but if your people can recite it back to you and it's always on the top of their mind, what we're about, that's when you know that you've made a difference. And and I can say from experience being around your players, most of them do know. You guys break out to family. You constantly recite that, forget about me, I love you. I guarantee you every single player in your program knows what family stands for. So that's a testament to you and your coaching staff. So leading into that, when does the installation of your core values start? Does that start in the summer? Does that start in the fall when you have everybody together? When does that, say I'm a new coach, I've got it in my head, what I want my program to look like, how I want my kids to act. When do I start installing those core values into my players?
So for us, I mean, obviously we want to make sure that any coach that comes into into our staff is familiar with our core values prior to anything. And that those meetings happen in the spring before we get to all of our off-season stuff in the summer. But throughout the summer, we really don't formally introduce anything. But, obviously there's situations that arise that we can use those as an example. Again, our first and foremost, the family one, that's touched on really, really early in the summer, from, June weights, when we really don't have truly our football team together, where it's just a lot of just the off-season weights and workouts part of it. But once we start getting into, and it is talked about there at times, but once we get into camp, that's where we really start to talk about it a little more. Even though, again, it's not our official team, it's not our actual football team at that point, because obviously we're going to add a lot more once school gets there and things like that. But it's definitely referred to a lot throughout the summer, and the importance of that. And we do mention that they are our core values. They're not just words we throw out there. We say this is really important to us. And so we start that through June, through July. And then once we get to August, and it kind of depends on the schedule, depending on how days fall with the start of school and the new format for 2-a-day practices. You get mandatory breaks throughout those days, and that's when we're able to get a little more formal with it and say, okay, here's our core values. And then we're able to dive in and say, okay, for this day, we're going to talk about family and what that means to our program. And then, you can do the same with grit and integrity. You can kind of take a day, and it doesn't take that long. You just need to have, a discussion and obviously you have that topic already there, but that we're able to kind of dive into a little more once we get to that point. And then it's constant referring back to it throughout the season.
So in the installation process, and I say installation, more instilling those into your players, you mentioned instilling it first in your assistant coaches. So if I'm a business executive, for example, I have these core values that I need to get to all of my people, whether it's a small organization or a big organization. How important is it for me to my assistant coaches, for example, or, my quote unquote assistant coaches, how important is it to educate them on what we're about so that they can push those core values to the people that they lead, maybe their quote unquote position group or things like that? And how important is it for them to be able to effectively teach that and model that?
Yeah, I think that's extremely important. Number one, we try to make sure that we hire people that fall in line with those core values too. Because, the core values of our program aren't just for our kids. It should be a part of their day-to-day as well. And so they should have a basic understanding of it, whether they realized it or not. It should be something that's, within them. That's kind of who we look for to hire. But, you definitely have to make sure that they are educated as far as what all of those mean and what's important to us, because it can't just come from one person. It can't just come from the same voice every day. It's got to come from all different places if it's really truly going to stick and, be able to be like we talked about, recited back and understood that that's a non-negotiable for our program. It's got to come from everywhere. It's got to come from all different coaches, because one person's not going to see every situation. And also, if only one person's saying it, it can kind of fall on deaf ears at times. And, different coaches have different relationships with kids. And, same thing in a business. Different people have different relationships with different people throughout the organization. And, obviously you want that to come from someone that is highly respected. And, I know that not every coach has just a really close relationship with every single kid we have. You'd like to, but it's just impossible when you're talking about the numbers that we deal with. But there is a coach who has a good relationship with any given kid. And, you want to make sure that that message is being talked about and, it's a part of the everyday conversation. And it's again being talked about a lot throughout every single day.
So when you think about culture, and I know that's a widely used buzzword, and some people have a really good grasp of it and some people don't, but everybody seems to use that word. When you think about culture, from my angle, culture really taught or coached behaviors of everybody within the organization, and that's what the outcome is. Your culture is the outcome of the behaviors within your organization. How important is it for everybody in your organization to have a good grasp of your core values, and how do those core values directly affect the behaviors on a day-to-day basis of everybody in your organization?
Yeah, I think obviously that's extremely important, that our core values are what drives us, because that's why they are those values that matter so much to us, because we see that, again, not only leading to a successful football team, a successful football season. That's not what we put those in place for solely. What we think those do is develop young people into leaders, husbands, fathers. That's what we think matters as we send them away from us as graduating seniors, and they're going off to college, the workforce, whatever that may be, and then obviously different family situations. Hopefully great husbands and fathers in the future. And we think that our core values help push them that direction. And that's really what they're there for. Again, that's why it was kind of a process, because it doesn't just have to do with football. It has to do with life after football, because that's honestly more important than high school football when they get to that point. And so that's what we wanted to make sure that we were trying to prepare people for, trying to prepare our young men that go through our program for. And, obviously that's why we talk about it every day. That's why we want to make sure that they understand it and its importance. And, the things that I love to hear is when there's hard things going on and we're meeting adversity and things like that. I like to hear it from our kids, and I have, is there's a situation that arises and somebody's not, forgetting about me and I love you. They're thinking about themselves. They're in whatever that looks like. You can hear some of their teammates start to refer to our family and forget about me, I love you. Other times you can hear them talk about having grit and fight through hard things. And so that's when that some of these have taken hold, and you hope take hold once they graduate and leave you, and hope that they still remember some of these things. That's when it's really done its job. That's when our program's done its job. And so, that's kind of exciting for me when I hear that.
We're all in the business of developing winners, and I think that's not on the scoreboard. Most of the time that's in life and their professional lives, and that's what makes it all worth it. So this podcast is called Lead to Win, and it's my personal philosophy or belief that if you have solid leadership and relatable and relevant core values that you instill in your constituents, winning will happen naturally on the scoreboard. How does that kind of align with your personal philosophy and how you lead kids to become winners?
Yeah, I think it starts, and depending on the situation that you came into, I'll use McDonald County as really my only experience when it comes to leading a program. Came in and I think it's Bill Walsh has a quote about acting or behaving like champions before you're champions, right? And basically saying that will come. And we've really tried to make sure that we follow that, and that was from the get-go. Things, again, you talk about the integrity core value. It's things like picking up after yourself whenever you're out to eat after a game, or leaving places better than you found it. Locker rooms, that there better not be any trash, tape, things like that on the floor. We want to make sure we get that cleaned up, and so things like that. And I think I've heard stories from other coaches how they say, how do you turn this program around? And that's one of the first things they say is, are we cleaning up after ourselves when we are out as a team? And And so we obviously wanted to make sure that we acted like that, because that's what champions do. That's what successful people do. They take care of their own space. And so we've tried to make sure we do that. But then we tried to just instill, again, through those core values, that those are what we expect. And that will translate into, other parts of your life, whether it be academics, whether it be football field. That's why they were so important to us, because we feel like they are all encompassing. And it's what drives us. It's what drives us as a program, ideally us as individuals. And like you said, it's kind of a culture that we want to make sure that we're trying to continue to push forward. And that's where core values have been a really big help for us.
All right, I want to wrap up. Something that I want to do with each of our guests on here. I'm just going to kind of rapid fire some questions at you, and just say the first thing that comes to your head, and it'll help us get to know you a little bit more. I don't need a long answer. I just quick and concise. And so here we go. Favorite food?
See, this is one that there may be a long answer, man. This could be about anything. And it's hard to beat a good steak. That's where I'm going to fall. Steak.
Favorite sports team?
You'd have to go the Chiefs, I think. Outside of the Mustangs. Sorry, Mustangs first, then the Chiefs.
If you got to go to one historic sporting event, which one would it be?
It would be, my homer is showing here, but man, I would have loved to have been at the World Series when the Royals won it a few years ago. Just haven't been so long. Like, that would have been a blast to be at.
Okay, what's the most valuable characteristic a leader can have?
Ooh.
One.
Man, I think they have to.
What is the best offense in football?
Are you talking team-wise or just schematically?
Schematically.
Okay. Man, these spread RPOs are pretty incredible. If we just had the personnel to do it like you watch on Saturdays, that would be just so much fun. The things that they do is so creative and incredible. It's really cool to watch.
So on the flip side, what's the best defense to stop that offense?
Well, shoot, I think if you could sit in a 3-4 the whole game, you'd feel great about that, because really it can adjust to anything. You can walk a guy down and get a 40 front if you want to. You can play 2 high safeties, 2 corners. I mean, you can play cover 4 to it. You can play 2-man to it. I mean, you can do about anything out of a 3-4. If you had the right guys all the time, year in and year out, and you could just sit in a 3-4, I think any defensive coordinator would say, yes, please.
Final question. Who has the best college mascot?
Oh gosh. I mean, I'm a Mizzou guy, so I mean, Truman the Tiger is the homer answer, but oh man, that's a tough one. Like mascot specifically, or like because there's some like the Chanticleers is a pretty cool mascot.
That's a good one. Yeah. Well, again, Coach, thank you for coming on this podcast. I hope our listeners were able to take away at least some pieces of our conversation. And thanks for giving us some valuable insight into how you run your program. And I know the people around here in our immediate area are definitely admirers of what we're doing. And, I appreciate your attention to core values and the way you lead our young men. And I can't say thank you enough. So appreciate you coming on.
Well, thanks for having me. This is a really cool setup that you're doing here. I mean, this, I know, just from our meetings that you've got with coaches and things like that, how important core values, mission statement, but also not only implementing that, but actually acting on those on a daily basis. I really appreciate that. When you go through that, I can just see your commitment to it, and in leading just the athletic department overall. It's, we're really lucky that we've got somebody that cares enough about doing things right, cares about kids. We're really lucky to have you at the top of it.
We hope you enjoyed this episode of the Lead to Win podcast. Be sure to set your notifications to receive updates on new episodes. The Lead to Win podcast can be found on Spotify, Amazon Music, and Apple Podcasts. I'm your host, Bo Bergen. Until next time, now go do the work.